It's a pleasure to talk to you
Me
about
too.
the Scorch trials. It's interesting how you've combined the stories of the second and the third one
Yeah.
to make the story work for the screen. Tell us a bit more about that.
Yeah, I mean, that is a challenge. Obviously the book fans are super important to us, so we don't make these changes lightly, but, our first goal is to make a great movie. And sometimes there's certain things in the book that just don't translate well to kind of a cinematic experience. So we always looked for, wherever we ran up against problems, we always looked for our answers in the books, or at least in the mythology that James created. So that was our approach that we took the next two books, The Scorch Trials and The Death Cure, and found the two movies out of that. So that was basically our approach for this.
How important has it always been for there to be harmony in that group of people? Because those actors have to be so close.
Yeah.
Because it's all about friendship, isn't it?
Yeah, we got lucked out. I mean, that was, for me, that was what I connected with in the first movie, basically, in the first story. That sense of brotherhood, it was very different. It wasn't about people killing each other. It was about them trying to work together and survive. And so that was very important at the very beginning, to bring all these casts in and find the right people that are just good people. There's no egos. They're very kind of gracious. They're fantastic people. And we had a little boot camp, and they kind of got closer together. And what was great about it, this little magic thing happened on the first movie where they became the best of friends for real, like off camera. And then it continued that after the movie was over. So they're still like really great friends, and it's so fun to be around them with that. They're the big reason why I came back and did this movie. So you're right. I think it shows up in unique ways that you couldn't really, you can't buy that kind of real sense of kind of connection.
Yeah, absolutely. It makes the experience more organic for everybody.
I think so too, yeah.
It's completely the opposite. In this one, the first one had, the glade, the maze, all
Sure.
nature and green, and this is the complete opposite.
Very
So
different
did you
color
have to
palette.
create a completely different world?
Yeah, it was, and that was kind of, for me, the appeal. I didn't want to just go back and rehash what we did in the first one. We kind of did it. So it was fun to kind of go into this new world. And obviously a lot of that comes from James. That's what he created in the book series. But that was something that was really exciting to kind of explore a whole new world that these characters kind of explore and discover. So yeah, it's fun that we actually get to change it up a little bit. Just the mechanics of the first one's mystery and intrigue and what's behind those walls. The question mark, is really important. And in this one, it's about, will we survive? It's this they're being pursued across this landscape. So it's kind of a non-stop thrill ride, essentially. A lot of adrenaline and momentum, So in the next one, I can assure you will be even more different. It's going to be different than all of them. So I love the idea that these three movies, held up next to each other when they're done, they're going to be very distinctly different from each other, but at the same time, it's the same kind of thread of the story, these characters, moving through this kind of story. So it's cool.
No, absolutely. And the good challenge of a second of a trilogy is to make it, resonate with the first one and open it up to the third. Do you think of them as a trilogy in your mind?
Yeah.
It's just a big story that you're telling
Yeah,
slowly?
that's definitely the way we approach it. Basically, is we didn't, especially when we started making the second one, we knew we were going to probably make the third one. So we started really, in a way we didn't on the first one, really thinking about how we're going to end this thing and setting things up in the second movie that we're going to pay off in the third and those kinds of things. So we really wanted to feel like a really great, trilogy, the beginning, middle, and end to this thing. So that's the goal. We'll see how it all shapes out.
No, it's true. Well, hopefully it will.
Hopefully well.
How does 3D change the storytelling for you?
It's interesting. I have to admit that I didn't shoot this in 3D, so I didn't shoot it with that intention. That was kind of done after the fact, essentially. But they did take a lot of care. They took a lot of time, and a lot of really talented artists came in and converted this thing into 3D. So I definitely I like what they did with the 3D conversion, although I didn't intend that way originally. But I definitely do sign off on it and think they did a good job with it. So we'll see. One day I'll do a real 3D movie, and where you actually make the creative decisions about 3D, which I've done before on my short film that I made, Ruin. I actually made that in 3D, and it's a unique tool to play with. You can actually use it to tell a story rather than just being a kind of a 3D kind of thing that you put on after the fact. But we'll see.
Because you're so attentive to the fans, how much do they inform the filmmaking for you? And for you, what is this story about for them?
Yeah, it's interesting. I mean, I definitely the book fans in particular are super important to us. They're the reason why we have these movies to begin with. But at the same time, what happened after the first one is that we got 75% more movie fans that aren't book fans. So now we have both of those audiences to serve. So it's a little difficult. It's not easy because we want to, we don't want to betray the fans, that started us on this journey. But the good thing is that we have James there, the author, who's kind of very supportive and kind of cheering us on, and to just make a good movie out of these stories, make a good cinematic experience for an audience. But you know, again, I think it comes down to the characters that people fell in love with. You know, these guys and the kind of their ultimate story of looking for a home, looking for freedom, looking for a chance to, you know, find their place in this crazy world. You know, and we'll continue that in the next one.
Yeah, absolutely. Well, Thomas as a character is very instinctive about his leadership.
Sure.
Is it the same a little bit with Dylan? Does he know how to be a lead actor? It feels like it.
Yeah, he definitely carries himself. He's got that presence, you know. And the thing is, he's very humble, and he's easy to look up to because he's the guy who's on the camera the most, you know, and he's working the hardest out of everyone. So it's easy to kind of look at him and kind of use him as a model, you know, to go after. So yeah, it works out. He leads very effortlessly.